This week, I sat down with Darren Kho, a sensory deprivation tank guru currently working part-time at Cloud9 while studying his master's degree. Darren was a super interesting dude to chat with, and we hope you enjoy this conversation. Before we get into it, a quick shout out to Vaughan, our sound engineer, for helping with the audio, and also to Genocide and Debt Collectors for letting us use their track Wake Up. You can follow these guys on Facebook or download via iTunes.
Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men with machine minds and machine hearts.
Yeah.
You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men.
Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up.
Darren, thanks heaps for coming to have a chat with me, man. How's it all going?
Thank you for having me, man. I'm super happy to be here. Your house is awesome, as I've alluded to before. Yeah, I've been good. It's my day off, so I went for a surf, had jiu-jitsu, and topped off with a float.
Epic, man. That is a killer mixture of a day.
Just to make sure, you know, I'm all energized to hopefully record a good podcast for you.
Sweet, man. So we're talking about float tanks, sensory deprivation tanks. For people who have absolutely no idea what we're talking about, can you fill us in?
Sure. So float tanks, they were invented, I think, in the 1950s. And basically what it is, I'll describe what it is, and I guess I'll outline what it's used for and what it's good for, I guess. So it's basically, if you imagine like a pod or a tank, it's filled with about 10 inches deep of water. We've dissolved into it about 500 kilograms of Epsom salts, which is a compound called magnesium sulfate. Yeah, it's a lot of salt. I think it's about like 23 big bags of like huge 25 kilo of salts, you know.
Wow,
it's huge.
It's a lot, eh?
Yeah, and that plays three functions. It most importantly, it makes the water more dense in your body so that you float on top of it. So It's physically impossible to sink. You can fall asleep on top of the water, no problem, and sort of just chill out. And the last two is that it's a known muscle relaxant, and it's been known to promote restful sleep. So the next step off that is we heat the water to your skin temperature so that you can't feel it. And we do the same with the surrounding air, so that when you are super still and you're not fidgeting, you're not moving or anything like that, your brain actually can't distinguish between water and air. So it can't tell which part of your body is submerged and which part of your body is above the water. Effectively, the boundary between the water and the air disappear, and it's basically like you're floating in space. So it's an anti-gravity effect. And then when you shut the lid, it's total silence and total darkness. And those two things, paired with the anti-gravity effect, achieve what we call sensory deprivation. And first and foremost, it's a super relaxing sort of experience to go through. And your brain's natural response to that is to drop into a super sort of meditative state. Your brainwave frequency actually drops from beta down to theta, which has been correlated to the brainwaves that are given off when Buddhist monks do their meditation thing, and when you lucid dream and stuff like that. So
Epic.
That's basically floating in a nutshell. Yeah.
So a few people may be put off with the fact that it's in what looks like a sort of incubation egg.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
It's an alien-looking UFO creature, which I think is so sick.
Yeah.
Is it for people that like small spaces? Probably not as much.
Well, I think on the surface, people that are slightly claustrophobic can sort of be put off by it. But here's the thing, we at Cloud9, where I work, as far as I know, we've got 3 people with clinical claustrophobia that float.
Oh, wow.
And on their first time, we told them, you can have the lid fully open, you can have it ajar, and only when you're comfortable to do so, you fully shut it. And they all shut it the first time. And so, if I guess you can think about it this way: if they can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it looks like it would be claustrophobic, but when you get in there, it's really not. It feels very expansive. It feels well, it's just relaxing because you can't see anything, so it literally feels like you're floating in space or a big ocean. It's a very sort of like liberating feeling, like, and I like, it's hard for me, like when people, that new people come in, they come out and like, dude, like, I'm claustrophobic, and I almost have to just like stop myself from laughing because I know it's like, it's not an issue. It's really not an issue. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you could keep the door open. I didn't actually think of that. I guess because the whole room's dark, it's not really going to be an issue, is it?
Not really. No. It's not an issue, man.
Yeah.
Like I say, you think it's gonna be, but it's the exact opposite. Yeah. Well, how did you find your float?
Yeah, it was awesome, man. Yeah.
You've had a couple, right?
I have. So it was maybe a few years ago. There was a chick in Christchurch who had a float tank in her garage, and I think she was studying her masters.
That's right. Sister Place.
Yes, that was the one,
that's
man.
the one.
Awesome chick, and it was awesome. At the time, I was doing heaps of meditation, so I'd committed to at least 20 minutes every night just to get myself in that zone.
That's solid, dude.
And I'd find myself like 20 minutes wasn't enough. I'd end up doing like 45, an hour.
Wow.
Just like, and it was,
5 minutes in, I'm just like, I gotta check out.
Yeah, really, you can't do it.
No. Well, like, my whole thing was like, I mean, I'm a pretty active person, so like I guess quote unquote meditations, and I'll go into this later, like the neurochemistry behind it, tend to be with sort of very active pursuits, so like hiking and surfing and martial arts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I find it very difficult to sit down in one place and just focus inwards, like without.
Interesting, because that's essentially what a float tank is.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, the environment is designed for that, basically. Yeah. It is funny to note that, while I can't, sit down and meditate in a room, but with a float tank, it's just
mindfulness, really.
Yeah.
But if you can practice that in your daily life, it's essentially the same sort of practice, isn't it?
Well, if you layer them on top of each other, they get more powerful. I think they are sort of slightly different because you are still getting sensory input when you're sitting down, and you do get sort of distracted. And one thing I've learned is that setting's everything, so when, I guess, if you're trying to meditate in your house, or the cars are passing by, there's still quite a lot of noise, but in a sensory deprivation tank, all that is removed, and there's literally nothing else to do but to look at your own mind. So I feel that would be the difference. I mean, if I was trying to do it at home, I'd be tempted to look at my phone, I'd be tempted to talk to people or whatever, but in the float tank, it's almost like forcing yourself to be mindful. Yeah.
It's quite a discipline, meditating, because you do have things like you'll get like out of nowhere, there's always that random itch on the end of the nose, and you observe it, and you're just like, oh, here we go. And it's the same as those thoughts which keep coming through your mind that you need to calm down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I found really helpful when I was practicing the meditation before going in the tank, was because the lengths are usually about an hour and a half.
For sure, yeah.
I did 2 1-hour floats. And as soon as I got in the tank, I was just straight into the zone.
Nice.
And it was amazing. The first one I did, because I had no idea what it was going to be like.
Right.
And it was good to have that sort of meditation practice. And I got straight into my zone, calmed all the outside noise, as in like all my thoughts that kept, throughout the day, you've always got your mind ticking over on things which you shouldn't actually be stressing about. And as soon as I calmed all that down, I was just in that mellow zone. I don't know what you'd call it, if there's a name for it.
Zen.
Just that Zen state, yeah.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got out of the tank, man, it was the craziest experience. I just burst into laughter. Like,
whoa, really?
Like uncontrollable laughter.
Okay.
And it was strange, man. I had no idea why, but I just felt so, I don't know, almost relieved, and it was like I'd taken like a big backpack off.
Yeah.
And
absolutely, yeah.
It was crazy. I was just like, I need to do this again.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I've heard some, like, I love hearing that. I love hearing people's like float experiences. I had one dude that came out of the float tank, and he's like, I just had a conversation with God, and I was like, whoa, do tell, sir.
Awesome.
And basically what he learned was that, if I remember correctly, he was super disconnected from like any sort of like mindful practice. So so everyone has, what I've learned is that everyone has their own sort of meditation, I guess, as I sort of explained earlier. Mine was sort of any sort of active pursuit. So this guy's was a walk on the beach every morning, and because he hadn't done that, in his words, he got like sort of super disconnected and sort of, I guess in a way, sort of lost his way. And when he got in the float tank and then got back out, he told me that you can sort of always be connected to, I guess, your higher consciousness or your ideals or whatever your highest potential is, but you got to sort of make the effort. And his lesson then was he wasn't making an effort, and the float sort of just held up a mirror, and he was like, okay, this is what I need to do. So
and that can be quite confronting for people, because it does, like meditation, that it does sort of reveal your ego.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people aren't willing to really face their ego, are they?
Not when there's lots of distractions around, especially in our modern world, and I understand it because I've been through it. But yeah, it can be super, super confronting. So I'll use myself as an example, and it's confronting because for people that haven't done it, like you can't be distracted by anything while you're in there. Like whatever pops up in your mind, you look at it and you have to deal with it. And if you can't do that, you don't enjoy the float tank experience. I've only ever met one person that didn't enjoy it, and you could almost like sort of tell, like when she walked in the door, like there was just this sort of dark like cloud like above her, and I mean, like she was also sort of on some meds and stuff like that, so that could have probably been more the reason. But yeah, if you can't sort of deal with your own sort of thoughts or ego, as you put it, and that's super rare. I mean, because we've done the best to build an environment that's super relaxing and free of judgment, and like all the staff members sort of take it on themselves to help you sort of integrate those learnings and help you move forward. But yeah, I mean, you have to deal with whatever comes up, and if you don't, you're not going to grow, you're not going to learn. And yeah, so just using myself as an example, two main fears were sort of shown to me, and that was a fear of the ocean and fear of sharks, and the second one was fear of public speaking. And for me, they're legit fears, man. Like,
you're a surfer, that's a bit.
Yeah, well, it got me into surfing, man.
Wow.
And it's my favorite thing to do right now. So I think when I was super young, I stupidly watched Jaws or something like that.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg. F you, man.
You stuffed it up.
So yeah, and ever since then, like I was super scared of sharks, and as a joke, my sister would like sort of kick me into a swimming pool, and even though I know sharks can't survive in chlorinated water, and you can see nothing's in there, my unconscious mind would literally freak out. I'd go into a spasm, and I like get out like as soon as possible. My sister's just laughing at me, and like, oh, this is terrible, and two other reasons. One is like when I found out what flow was, knowledge of flow, and I used to do downhill longboarding. So
it's a dangerous sport.
It's super dangerous. Yeah. So I was like, I can't do this because I just had too many injuries from it.
Yeah.
So a combination of those three reasons: sharks, longboarding, and knowledge of the psychology of flow. Pushed me towards surfing. So I was like, I guess I'm doing this now. And I still remember to this day, man, like paddling out for that first time, looking like the prey of an apex predator. You're freaking out, but you're still doing it, And,
awesome, man. That's got to be persevered into that.
Yeah, it's the most exhilarating thing I've ever done. And like that was like a huge reminder to like go towards what you're afraid of, and that's why I feel like, I mean, me personally, and I'm sure for many other people, like that's such a valuable aspect of the float tank. It shows you what you're afraid of, and then it's up to you to really sort of shoulder that and overcome it. And yeah, I mean, I've met some amazing people along the way of surfing. I haven't really been doing it very long, but it's a really cool sport to get into. And pretty interestingly, there was a neuroscientist by the name of Justin Feinstein. He's really cool because he built his own sort of float laboratory, and they're sort of next level equipment and stuff like that. And he was comparing the brainwaves that are recorded from people that float and people that surf, and they're pretty much the same.
Wow.
It's really, really cool.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's the neurochemistry of flow. Have you heard much about
I haven't.
Should I?
Yeah,
go
do touch on it.
Okay, sweet. So the psychology of flow. This is like, so once you have I think it's your 4 basic needs covered, like food, water, shelter. I can't remember the last one, but once you have all 4, then your focus is put to what's called your 5th evolutionary drive, which is the psychological state of flow. And that's basically like learning new things, elevating sort of consciousness, and I guess just bettering yourself, I guess, or and so people hit flow when they have this through whatever activity they do. And there's multiple activities, whether it's meditation, float tanks, surfing, dancing is a big one, mountain climbing. They get this eclectic mix of 5 neurochemicals. They're serotonin, dopamine, endorphins, norepinephrine, and anandamine. I've probably butchered that, but yeah. And when you get this like optimal mix of neurochemicals, probably the runners will understand this. When you get like a runner's high, like focus just gets laser sharp, you lose sense of time, and it's almost like you make the right decision after right decision and without thinking. So your ego's out of the play, you're just fully in the present moment, and because you're making right decision after right decision, it feels like a flowy experience, and that's basically why they call it flow. That's the reason why anyone does anything, from dancing to sex to drinking to whatever it is. That's what they're aiming for, and for me that was cool to find out, because when I had my first sort of outdoor meditation experience where I climbed a mountain, tired out my body, got what's called prefrontal hypofrontality, which is the front part of your brain shuts down, which regulates time. And that's why people sometimes get the runner's high. And then because you're out in nature is the embodiment of the present moment, right? It's not like, oh, is this pork vegan or something like that?
Yeah.
It doesn't really care. It just goes on and on and on. And because you're in that present moment and you've got that sort of runner's high, all that's left to do, and it's almost done for you. You just naturally go inwards. And once I got that, I was like, oh, this is the thing. Like, and I came back. I was like, dudes, listen to me. Like, that's what I'm telling you. And obviously, like, everyone's like, dude, fuck off, man. Like, get away from me. So and now that I know the neurochemistry of flow, like, it makes sense to me. Like, oh, okay, that's why people dance. That's why people rock climb and stuff like that. So
that's super interesting.
It's awesome, man.
It must tie in really well with the float tanks as well, because you're talking before about doing jiu-jitsu and going for a surf.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you tire your body out, we were talking about this earlier, your float experience will be much more enjoyable as well, because you're sort of already in that
For sure. In that state. I mean, that's I guess it's a form of priming, right? You're priming yourself before going in the tank, and everyone has their own thing, but we always recommend people before going for a float to exercise or meditate or something like that, because it just heightens the experience. As opposed to getting in there, the first half hour you have to calm down the mind, blah blah blah. When you exercise, your cortex is sort of half shut down, you know, so your float's a little bit more effective that way. Yeah.
What are some of the other benefits of floating in terms of, there's a lot of physical benefits as well?
Yeah, for sure.
Like sports recovery and...
Yeah, so the owners, Tim and Laura Bateman. So Tim's currently a professional rugby player for the Crusaders.
Oh, yeah.
And this is actually super awesome, the story behind the genesis of Cloud9. Laura was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, MS, multiple sclerosis, and so they had to move to Japan to get treatment. And while they were there, someone put them onto floating, and I guess they both had different sets of benefits from it. Tim obviously being a pro or elite athlete, and they're like a total type of different human being, man. They're super awesome to be around. Yeah, and he, according to him, like it's the best tool for like visualization and obviously like sports recovery and stuff like that. People may know athletes like Steph Curry and his Golden State Warriors all float and stuff like that.
Awesome.
And there's a bunch of other like sort of, I don't follow baseball, but I think Patriots or something. I could be wrong, but one of those teams floats as well. So that's the sort of elite athlete side of it. With the autoimmune side of it, and this sort of ties into flow as well, I'll tell the story of Stephen Kotler, like a scientific journalist, but I'll start with Laura. So she got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and she found the float tank to be like super beneficial for like recovery and relaxing the mind and stuff like that. And that's actually the reason why Cloud9 got started, and the reason why I'm on this podcast. Like we wouldn't be talking if like that did not happen. So and so coming back to flow and why I sort of got into surfing, I found out that the scientific journalist was diagnosed with his own sort of autoimmune disease. I think it's called Lyme disease, and it's super scary. Like when he describes it, for example, he was telling a story where he's driving a car and he comes up to a red light and it goes green. He forgot what green meant, and there was like a bunch of people behind him all honking. He's freaking out. Finally he remembers green means go. He looks down, then he looks down and he forgets how to drive stick.
No.
And the whole time, like, so his brain's deteriorating, his body's deteriorating, he's literally bedridden. And so he, like, because, like, he realized, like, he was just going to be a burden to his loved ones, he sadly sort of, like, decided to kill himself, right?
No.
But the day he decided to do that, one of his mates came up and was super adamant that they were going to go surfing. And he's like, dude, I can't even get out of bed. Like, that's a silly proposition. But this guy was, just kept like, we're going surfing. And eventually he was like, okay, yeah, I can always kill myself tomorrow. Like, I'll go surfing. And the way he describes it, he sort of, they carried him to the water. The waves were super small, but once the wave came, I think he says, if I remember correctly, muscle memory took over and he just popped up. And he says when he popped up, it felt like he popped up to another dimension. And he had quote unquote what he said was a quasi mystical experience, right? And because he had gone looking for those sort of mystical experiences, throughout uni and never sort of really found them. And because he was a scientific journalist, he was like, what is happening to, like, I don't understand this. Like, why am I having spiritual experiences while surfing? And that sort of led to him just like studying flow. And eventually he basically got sort of cured from autoimmune disease. And he was like, surfing's not a known cure for autoimmune diseases. Like, what is going on? And that's when he sort of figured out about flow, and that's why I'm so interested in it. And the float tank is one of the best ways to like surely get flow. I don't know if I'm using the right words, but it's super reliable in terms of inducing flow. Like literally every time you go in, you're gonna get it.
Because you definitely feel it. I mean, when I was in last week, it was just amazing that you sort of I had a moment sort of, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of the way through, and I was just like, just felt, I don't know, it's beyond description.
It's hard to describe.
It's so hard to describe, and afterwards I felt so fresh and renewed, and I was like, oh, I needed to be doing this far more regularly.
Absolutely. I mean, like whenever I come out, like my breathing's so much like smoother and crisper and deeper and more rhythmic, and why I like it so much is with that flow state, I can like literally super learn. Like, I don't know if you ever tried like reading after a float. Man, you devour that book.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'll definitely have to try that.
Try it, man. Yeah. I mean, because I'm trained as an engineer, so I really like to sort of break things down and problem solve. So obviously, I similar to Steven, I was like, I need to figure out what it's doing to my brain. So literally, like after I went through a phase where I was floating like maybe like 4 times a week,
Epic.
And after each one, I was just devouring books on psychology and philosophy and floating, and I've learned a lot in this last past year of why we do things and how we relate to other people. Basically, that's the two main sort of benefits that I've got from it. Yeah, in addition to super learning and getting flow and all those like awesome sports and stuff like that too. Yeah,
because Joe Rogan, you follow Joe Rogan's podcast.
Absolutely, man. I listen to too much of that guy.
Yeah. Isn't it funny, the guy that used to host Fear Factor is now like a modern day philosopher?
Yeah, it's hilarious, man. It's hilarious. But I think most comedians, because he's a comedian too, like, you have to be switched on. Yeah. You have to be super aware. Yeah,
and he's got a float tank in his basement, I believe.
Yep, he does.
And so he smashes that, and he says he gets lots of benefits just from the constant use of it. And he even goes in there because he does is it jiu-jitsu or
jiu-jitsu.
And he says he sort of practices techniques in there in his mind.
Yeah,
do you use any sort of techniques in there for, say, like learning new things or?
For sure. I mean, like, visualization's obviously like huge, right? I mean, lots of, I haven't kept up with the latest sort of literature, but I mean, if you can see something in your mind before it's gonna happen, I mean, like, the chances of it happening are way higher, right? So, and there's no better tool, there's no better environment, there's no other environment like a float tank on Earth, right? You're never gonna be fully without gravity. You're not gonna have no smell, no sight, no sound, anything. So it's the perfect environment to experiment visually and mentally with your own mind. So the massive benefits from it. I mean, one of our ambassadors, Hayden Smith, he recently he won some prestigious jiu-jitsu competition. I don't know what the name of it was, and he recently got promoted to a purple belt, which is in the jiu-jitsu world, that's
big,
huge achievement. And according to him, like, well, because he's super academic with his study of jiu-jitsu, he like takes notes and draws pictures and stuff, and yeah, he for sure sort of runs things through in his mind in jiu-jitsu. So it's a great tool for learning, and it's also a great tool for deconditioning. So a lot of people with addictions like smoking and alcoholism and other hard drugs like heroin and stuff like that, float tank under the relevant clinical sort of test setups, I guess, shown to have massive benefits, as opposed to one of those AA meetings with like 8% success rate. I don't know what the success rate with float tanks is like precisely, but it's a lot better. And we've had a couple people like trying to quit smoking through floating, and I don't know what the latest information on that is, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was very positive.
Wow, it'd be interesting if there was some studies done on the benefits like that.
There have been. I don't know them off the top of my head, but like I say, for anyone interested, all that information is probably online. Weight loss, addictions. It's basically a strong form of hypnotherapy. And you can the benefit of the float tank is you sort of do it yourself. And I guess a good way for people that are interested is you set up this sort of like hell that you want to avoid. What would happen if you continued doing all the things that you probably shouldn't do? So you get crystal clear on that, and obviously in the float tank it doesn't get any clearer than that because there's no distractions. And then you set up like a sort of like personal heaven to strive for, i.e. what your life would end up if you stopped doing the things you knew you should stop doing and started doing the things that you knew you started doing. And with that sort of framework, you have something to work towards. So for anyone trying to do that, and you have access to a float tank, try that out and let me know how it goes.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
What are some of the techniques that you use in the tank? Like there's a lot of the breathing practices seem to be the most popular, as in with meditation. Yeah,
for sure. So in the float tank, you're just basically trying to quieten your own mind down. While it's going to happen like within 40 minutes naturally, I guess, like 30-40 minutes, you can sort of like
accelerate
it, absolutely. And like you say, the easiest way to do that is just to focus on your breathing. So the reason why we tell people that is because you need to give your mind one thing to focus on, as opposed to like 50 million different things. And the thinking around that is that if you sort of do it long enough, your brain just your mind just settles and quietens, and eventually you hit this Zen state. So that's one. Another one is cues, like hypnotherapy cues for yourself. So one of our staff members does this, and she actually went for a year's worth of hypnotherapy. And her cue is putting her thumb and her middle finger together. And once she does that, like, she just settles in. What I do is, when I learned about the different brainwave states, so beta, alpha, theta, and delta, they're essentially, so we're in beta now, and beta is like a high frequency wavelength. If you measure it through, I think, an EEG, I could be wrong, but at any rate, it is a high frequency wave, brainwave. Below that is alpha, which is the flow state that we were talking about before, where you're laser focused, you've lost sense of time, and it's a flow-like experience. Below that is theta. Now, usually people skip theta and just go straight to delta, which is deep, deep, deep sleep, the deepest possible sleep, which is the longest, slowest brainwave length. But above that is theta, and I think I said before, like, it's been correlated with, like, when Buddhist Buddhist monks do their meditation thing and lucid dreaming and stuff like that. That's what the float tank is designed for, basically. So when I learned that, I basically just visualized a high frequency wave lengthening out, and I don't know why, but I visualized stairs that go down to like some deep dark thing, you know, and like once I do that, I'm in there.
It sounds a lot like lucid dreaming. Have you done much study or practice into that?
I have indeed. I tried it. I tried getting into it for a really, really long time. I can't remember where I heard about it. It must have been, I think, Joe Rogan or something like that. And so psychologists know that dreams can hold massive utility in terms of telling you, A, what you're afraid of, what you should do, what you should stop doing. And in dreams, you sacrifice coherence for completion, whereas in our waking state, we sacrifice completion for coherence so that things make sense. And interesting side note, we know that we don't author our own thoughts. So I think, you know, and I thought this at one point, that, you know, you are your own author of your own thoughts, but really you're not. They just happen to you, right? When you dream, they just happen. You don't manufacture that dream. So that raises a really interesting question. Like, something in your brain is thinking for you, right? Why is it doing that? You know? And the float tank's super great for entering into that dream state if you get good at it.
Sure.
And yeah, I had my first sort of lucid dream experience. I mean, like, I had like mini sort of lucid dreams where I would sort of wake up in my own dream, and once I realized I'm dreaming, like, oh shit, then you know, that surprise, you sort of like wake up from it, you know?
Sure.
And yeah, this one time I went for a hot yoga class, like super early in the morning, and before we opened, I snuck in for a float. And this is a pretty funny story, actually, because the night before, I talked to this psychology student. We were talking about lucid dreaming, and it was an awesome conversation. But he ends it like this. He's like, whoa, man, apparently when you're lucid dreaming, there's this shadow figure, there's this man in there that wants to take your body. And once you leave your body and he takes it, you can't go back. And I'm like, dude, why did you tell me that?
That's an awful thing.
I'm gonna freak out. And when I hopped in the tank, and like when I was literally just about to enter dream state, I saw a silhouette of a man. And I was like, whoa, this is so scary. But what I had to do was like sort of, I think I literally just went like, oh dude, if you want my body, you can have it. I mean, I got exploring to do. Like, see you later. And I think the significance of that is you let go of fear.
Yeah.
And yeah, once I did that, I just boom, went straight lucid.
Wow.
And yeah, it's an interesting space to
explore,
to occupy.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because I did quite a bit of practice, and I kept like a dream journal, which I found incredibly helpful.
Absolutely, I think it's one of the best things people can do.
Yeah, and then just I really wanted to explore. I was reading a few books on lucid dreaming at the time, and really wanted to explore this sort of sphere and sort of get really into it.
Right.
And I wrote down a list of things that I wanted to achieve in the lucid state, and I think having that goal makes you far more willing, because you're in the back of your mind, you're wanting to achieve it. And so the thing with lucid dreaming, and it's what was that movie with the dream movie. I can't remember the name of it.
Inception?
Inception.
Oh, yeah.
You know, right at the end, how he's spinning that the top.
Oh, right.
And you're not sure whether that's pretty much covering what a dream sign is.
Yeah.
And for me, I found that my dream sign was looking at my hand.
Yes, yeah.
So what I'd do during the day in waking state was I'd practice just looking at my hand.
Yeah.
And for some reason, while I was in the dream state, every time I looked at my hand, I would realize straight away that I was dreaming.
Yeah.
So that was my sign.
Nice.
And if you get into the practice of doing it physically, then it just becomes second nature in the dream.
Absolutely.
And so that was sort of my in to dreaming, because a lot of the time you wake up in the morning, you're like, man, that was a crazy dream.
Yes.
And you're like, there were so many signs that I was dreaming, but you're just so in that zone that you don't notice it. And that's why having the dream sign for me was like a massive help.
For sure.
And so once I actually realised I was deep in the lucid dream, after the first few, which is as soon as you have it, you get that, oh, I'm dreaming, and then straight away you wake up because of the excitement. As soon as you calm yourself from that, you can actually then explore that realm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a documentary called Waking Life. Have you seen that?
No. Who's it?
Check that out.
Okay.
It's a really funky little documentary. It's kind of all cartoonish, and it's all sort of done. It's pretty much following a guy through his lucid dream, and he's just going along talking to interesting characters. And there's a few things which I wrote down in that documentary which I wanted to try, because they said, oh, this is what happens in a, you know, there was things like you're in dream state, you can't pick up changes in light. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
What, in the real sort of physical world?
Yeah, well, in the dream state. So if you flick on a switch, nothing will change, because your brain can't, in that dream state, comprehend light going on, light going off.
Right.
So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Wrote that down. I'll try that.
Yeah.
Another one was looking at a digital clock. For some reason, the brain can't comprehend the digits.
Yeah.
And so it goes all gobbledygook. And I was like, oh, I'll see what that's like.
Yeah.
And another one was looking in mirrors and seeing yourself in a mirror.
Whoa.
And I was just like straight away, I was like, these are such interesting things to try and play with and just see what happens.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity.
Do you get recurring characters in your dream?
No.
I have one recurring character. Well, I haven't done lucid dreaming in a while, but my grandmother comes and visits me a lot in dream state.
Interesting.
Yeah. The first time it happened was just after she passed away. And I slept in her old bedroom, right? And I had a gnarly dream, man. She appeared, and I just broke down crying, because I had come to New Zealand, I lived here a little while, and I didn't use my native tongue that much, right? So after a while, you know, I conversing with my grandmother was difficult, and then so when she passed away, I kind of felt guilty that, you know, I didn't hold the capability to have like deep, meaningful conversations with her. And so when she came in my dream, I just broke down crying. I thought, I'm sorry, I can't speak to you, blah blah blah. She's like, well, we're talking, aren't we? I'm like, whoa, you know, like awesome. So that's a cool thing, you know, like how dreams will. They speak to you in a language that's not English, but yet you understand it fully, you know?
Totally.
And what you were saying about the dream journal, I think that's one of the most important things, and the reason why I think that is because dreams are the birthplace of thought, right?
Totally.
And from all your thoughts, you know, you pick out ones that show promise and show potential, and those ones are the ones you put down into a plan, and the ones that you act out, right? And action is probably the most important thing, right? Because it defines who you are.
For sure.
Well, if you trace that back, the inception of that is your dreams, right? So, and because organization is a high level skill, the better you are at organizing whatever it is in your life, the smoother it goes, right? So based on that, I think dream journals are super, super important, because they tell you things, man, and you should definitely listen.
Yeah, because it just gets you in that conscious mind state that when you wake up that you're already wanting to remember what just happened.
Yeah, and then it just goes away, and you're like, damn.
Yeah, and it's interesting because then you read through some of these dreams, and you're just like, wow, this is like, you can start seeing patterns emerge and things like that. Like, it'll be something will relate to, say, if you're having a stressful time at work, you'll start seeing strange patterns occurring in the dreams.
Absolutely, yeah. So I only sort of go back to lucid dreaming when I'm having problems. Like, when I'm not, it's just like a cartoon. It's like, why am I here? This is a waste of time. I might as well just go back to sleep. And a lot of other people's experience is the same. You know, when they're going through like troubling times, or they've lost a loved one, like sort of, you know, how I did. dreams can be super beneficial, you know. So that episode with my grandmother sort of just released a lot of guilt, you know. So yeah, I wish I knew more about the psychology of dreaming. For anyone that's interested, Carl Jung has wrote a very comprehensive analysis of dreams. I think it's called Volume 12 of his literary works, which is called Dreams and Interpretations. And yeah, that's for sure on my to read list.
I'll have to check that on as well. It's interesting how the dream state allows you to reveal to yourself the true power of thought, and how our mind is the only thing constricting us in a lot of ways. Like I found with the lucid dreaming, I really wanted to fly. Like that was the true experience I wanted to have, and I just couldn't do it in the dream state. It was I just couldn't get my mind around the whole fact that I could just free flow fly. And I realized later that it was just my own mind which was the only thing restricting me. And it was quite funny. So I had the goal set for the next lucid dream was to fly. And so going about some strange dream, I remember I was standing on top of a car, God only knows why. And I looked at my hand, I was like, sweet, lucid dream, let's do this. And then I jumped straight up in the air to fly. But for some reason, my brain constricts me to only like the up and down and left and right.
Right.
And then I was really frustrated, angry at myself. I was like, oh, it's such a pain. Like I was so close. And then I sort of thought about it. And then in my waking state, I realized that it was my own mind was the only thing restricting me from just having the free flow, flying through the air. And so I thought about it heaps and just trained in my mind. I was like, look, I can do this. You know, I just kept thinking about it, imagining myself doing it. And then the next time I got into that lucid state, boom, just straight into like free flying. And it was incredible, man, because I remember I was flying and I was just like, right, I want to see the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. So my granddad was an astronomer, and while he was alive, he had witnessed or observed more auroras than anyone else in the southern hemisphere.
Damn.
And dude, if you ever get the chance to see an aurora, they are majestic, man. They're just absolutely magical.
Yeah.
And so I said to myself in the dream state, I want to see the most amazing aurora I could possibly see.
Wow.
And with a flick of a hand, I just threw up this beautiful clear night sky, this crazy aurora. And I remember I was just flying over like pine trees, and I could like smell the pine, I could feel the air on my face.
Whoa.
And I was like, this is one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. And it's all in my mind.
Yeah.
It's not even real.
Yeah.
And I woke up, man, and I was just buzzing. I was on like a whole day high from this like awesome experience.
Yeah.
And it was all something that I just conjured up while I was asleep.
Yeah.
It's like this sort of realm which barely gets recognized. We could use it for, there's so much potential in this realm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wish I knew more, man. And a lot of people do figure out that, oh yeah, the only thing constricting me is literally my own mind. And how did you like overcome that? Did you just
thinking about it in waking state? Yeah,
right.
Just playing with the idea a lot and realizing that I can actually do it. Like just playing through all the scenarios and yeah. Have you heard of astral projection
I have.
before?
That's like out of body experiences, right?
It is. It's sort of like the next step from lucid dreaming.
Oh, it's level 2?
It's like level 2. And this is the crazy level which
I'm still chilling in level 1, dog.
Yeah, I haven't explored, and this is I've read a bit of literature on it, and I haven't actually explored the state myself. But I think that's where it starts getting a bit more crazy. And you were talking about the sort of the dark shadows and things like that. I think that's where a lot of this starts coming into play.
Okay,
and it's
confronting your demons and stuff.
No, it's more than that. It's like it's going to sound absolutely crazy, but it's like other entities on this astral plane.
Oh, right.
And so the theory is that we're attached to this life by some sort of grey cord. And when you astral project, you can you pull yourself out of your body, and you're attached by this silver grey cord to your sleeping body.
Whoa.
And people report like floating in like the near the ceiling of their room and actually watching themselves sleep.
Yeah. I mean, I've recently met a bunch of people that have told me about their out-of-body experiences, and they describe the same thing with the cord, and that they look at themselves and stuff like that. if you're interested, I do know like the guy that owns Zero Gravity Institute, which is a float tanks facility in Austin, Texas. He claims that he goes to this astral thing, playing whatever, because I'm not familiar with it. Within a minute of every time he goes into the float tank.
Really?
And he's done a very interesting podcast on that. So
I'd be interested to hear it, because I mean, I've only
out.
read a few things. I tried it a few times,
Right.
And I was using like the binaural beats. Is that what it's called? And that sort of helped me get. But I was so close to that state, and I remember that you go through like a sort of vibration.
Yeah.
And I sort of felt that I got to that vibration level of when like you feel your sort of soul leaving the body.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I felt that, I got too excited.
Yeah, I have had the same experience in the float tank. Like,
You have?
This is gonna sound so strange, but if this helps with any sort of credibility on my part, just remember that I am like paid to be an engineer. You know, I'm paid to like make decisions based on like scientific data and rational judgments. I do not know what to make of this, by the way.
Sure.
So I was in the float tank getting deep, and this is gonna sound so crazy, but
Dude, lay it out.
at one point there was this voice that went, yo, if you want to leave your body, you can totally leave your body. But in my mind, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to come back. So I'm probably just going to chill for now.
Yeah, thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah, thank you, but no thank you. So, I mean, that's sort of as close as I can get.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it just freaked me out, man.
Again, it's funny because you say a lot of it is fear, and a lot of these topics sort of keep coming back to the whole thing of fear.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's quite natural to be scared of all this stuff because it's so unknown.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like with this astral plane, apparently there's sort of not so friendly. I don't know what you'd call them.
Right.
Not beings, but whatever they are.
Entities or
Entities
whatever,
is probably
right.
the best way. But there's also just as many good entities.
Right.
And
Could they be archetypes? You know how so Carl Jung talks about different archetypes, and Thor and Loki would be an archetype. You have or Lion King, like Mufasa and Scar, or what's another, like Harry Potter and Voldemort.
I'd say it would be,
that?
man. I think
Yeah.
that's pretty much the whole universe, the yin and the yang.
Yeah. That's the essence of all human narrative, right?
Yeah, totally.
Once I figured that, once I became aware of that, then watching movies became way more interesting, because before that I was in a world of literalism, so like obviously doing lots of engineering and stuff like that, you take the world very, very like seriously,
As it is,
as it is, that's a better way of putting it. But once exploring dream states and psychology and the stories that we tell ourselves, there's these archetypes, there's as I mentioned, the hell that you want to avoid and the heaven that you want to strive for, and they're symbolized and embodied in storytelling, and now they're done through movies, like the Avengers. Why are people so captivated by the Avengers?
Beating the bad guy.
Yeah, the good and the bad guy, and that's the essence of all narrative. It's somehow maintaining a balance between the integrity of the individual, but also still being accountable to civilization, or as many people nowadays, call it, it's an oppressive patriarchy. Not really. I mean, it keeps you alive,
Sure,
so you need
sure.
both, and finding the balance is pretty much the essence of all narrative and the human story. Yeah,
Totally agree,
it's
man.
super cool.
I'll be interested, man. Have you like in the float tank? Have you listened to like podcasts, or do you listen to any like Alan Watts or any?
Oh, I do. I'm a big fan of Alan Watts.
Yeah.
We recently did what was called like a yoga nidra. I don't know what nidra means in Sanskrit, but it's basically this recording that it's like a guided meditation, and it just like it brings up emotions in you.
Awesome.
I haven't listened to any sort of recordings in there, but I probably should. There's a bunch of psychology lectures that I want to listen to, and in the float tank, I think that would be a great way to absorb that information. Yeah.
Because I mean, the whole float tank idea is to sort of try and clear the mind, but then also you could use it as a tool to just focus on
to
one
learn.
thing, because usually
yeah.
we've got so many things going on around us. The phone's sitting there flashing.
Oh yeah,
And
Facebook is calling.
Facebook is calling, and
you got some notifications, bro. You better check them.
Who is it? Yeah, no, exactly. What's the longest you've done in the float tank?
4 hours.
4 hours,
Yeah,
killer.
that was a mission, man. Like multiple times, and even with an hour, like sometimes I'm like, God damn, I'm still in here, really? But like, those I guess like when I'm like so super stressed, my mind just can't shut up.
Yeah.
But yeah, 4 hours was the longest one I've ever done.
And how was that? That would have been going pretty deep.
Oh yeah. When did I do this one? I generally don't do 4 hour floats because it's a huge commitment.
Oh, for sure.
And you can usually get that work done in like an hour or an hour and a half. I think I just wanted to see what it was like. But I remember coming out like going, oh, that was way too long.
Really?
yeah. I'm like, cause I think it's just different people and different preferences. So I mean, I think I do know people that like this sort of slightly longer floats, but they're super seasoned. You know, like I mentioned, like Kevin Johnson from Zero Gravity Institute spends like 2 to 4 hours in there. But generally, you know, you're starting off like, because I had this sort of like ego, you know, like, oh, I can do 2, I can do 3 hours in the tank. But you can get your work done in an hour easy. Yeah.
I find an hour is almost too short though, because you
Oh,
sort
really?
I think maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours would be the
hour
perfect.
and a half is a sweet spot for sure.
Yeah, especially if you can get straight into that meditative state, and then you just right into it. Because a lot of people that would be doing it for the first time may not have that practice, and that they may. The main issue with meditation is just clearing the mind of all those thoughts, that constant chatter, and like we put up with it all day. But when you're in the meditative state, you've got to just sit there and just observe, and then just pull in any of these thoughts which are out there.
Absolutely, I think Alan Watts said it best, man. He was like trying to quiet the mind. You can't think of quieting the mind because that's thinking, right? And if you do that, that's kind of like. He says it so much better. It's like trying to smooth turbulent water with a like a smoothing
a knife
thing.
or something.
Yeah, whatever. It's not gonna work. Like
Yeah.
what you should do is just let it do its thing, and eventually it'll settle. And it's the same thing with your mind. You can't get frustrated with it. You just look at it without judgment. And you know, we all have, you know, like really weird, out there thoughts, and like I think a lot of people kind of harshly judge themselves for having like super like outlandish thoughts or whatever, but you kind of just have to accept that. And like one way to learn how to accept that is just to understand that your thoughts, well, as I alluded to before, you don't author them, right? They are a result of your environment, and that includes the people that you hang around with, the books that you read, and just what's around you, you know. So don't beat yourself up too much if you're having, you know, weird thoughts. And I think my dad said it best. He saw, this was actually genius on my dad's part, because I was super into art, right? And so he looked at that and he was like, okay, the lesson I need to teach him, you know, I need to, you know, make it relatable to him some way. So he sat me down and he's like, son, you know, when you start off in life, you're kind of like the color white. You know, if we use ourselves as paint, you know, like as an analogy, you start off as the color white, and as you go through life, you know, you'll mingle with like black paint or red paint or yellow paint. But the thing is, like white paint turns to the color or whatever it's, you know, mixed with, right? Yeah, I thought that was super
That's an
cool.
awesome analogy.
Yeah. So it's the same thing with your thoughts, man. Like, so watch who you hang around with. Watch what kind of environment you're in, and well, that, I guess, it gives you power and control, because once you realize that, you can sort of almost design and manufacture the type of thoughts you'll have. Obviously, it won't be perfect, but it's better than nothing, I guess.
Just harnessing the power of the mind as well, eh?
Yeah,
and creating the reality that you want to be there. Because there's so many studies showing how powerful the mind is, and how, like,
Absolutely.
if you want to realize these goals, you just have to focus on them and just believe in them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and also you got to work you super hard.
Sure.
Like one thing that frustrates me is this whole law of attraction thing where you just think good thoughts, blah blah blah. But I think it's the opposite. Like, you visualize what you don't want to happen and move away from that. I think that's a lot more effective. But yeah, the placebo effect, man, is something that fascinates me. And I come from a family of doctors, and we talk about this sometimes. So one of my cousins is a GP here in Christchurch, and he was explaining to me, like, when I first got this job, and obviously, like, studying the mind became a priority for me, right? So I was asking him about it, and he's like, well, this is what's happened. With the advent of medicine, mortality rates have stayed the same, but the index, whatever it is, however they calculate it, I don't really know, for happiness has dropped, right? So he's like, well, what's happening, you know? So I think, like, well, too much stimulation from the modern world, right?
Sure.
So you're not getting into that sort of parasympathetic rest and digest state. But he also described the textbook example of the placebo experiment, where I think the example that he used, and there have been multiple studies on this, but the one that he used was people going for knee surgeries. So there was one control group that underwent the knee surgery. The other group was told that they were going for the knee surgery, but they just sort of made an incision and stitched it back up. And what they found was that people that didn't get operated on but got told that they were going to have knee surgery, some of those cases actually showed, like, increased rate of recovery and improvement without knee surgery. So What is that, you know? Like, and I think, like, I mean, for me, like, because of how the float tanks tap you into your own mind, like, and obviously I'm biased because I work there, so, you know, take this with a grain of salt. But I think it's one of the greatest ways to tap into the placebo effect, and it might have something to do with flow as well. But I don't know. Yeah.
The placebo effect can be amplified as well. They've done studies showing, like, if you have, like, a certain coloured pill, or, you know, the bigger the pill, or the more they sort of make a big deal of it before someone taking it, can all amplify this placebo effect.
Right.
And it's crazy that when you think it literally, it's just our mind tricking us into believing something which isn't actually there. And then how can we apply that to life? Like, how can we make that benefit our overall life rather than just the sort of physical ailment?
Figure that out, and I'll pay you a lot of money, sir. Yeah, well, I ask this all the time. On my dad's side, he's got 7 siblings, and each one of those siblings has a daughter or a son that's each one of them is a doctor, right? So I ask him all the time, and the last one I asked was like, you can't really hack it, but I can't remember why she said or the reason she gave. But yeah, I mean, I think we should be studying this a lot, man.
For
like,
sure.
But because then we won't need, you know, sort of pills or anything like that. But, you know, I could be wrong. That's the thing. So yeah.
So what's your advice if anyone's listening to this podcast and is sort of, you know, a little bit more interested in floating now? What's your advice to someone who's, like, sort of on the edge of, like, oh, should I give it a crack? Should I not?
Well, I mean, do it. Like, the worst case scenario is you're going to get, like, a super relaxing experience, right?
It is as well.
And beyond that, like, yeah, I say do it. And like, for sure, do your own research and before going in. But after that, I think it's super important to, because you're gonna find, like, you're gonna come across some bold claims about what floating can do.
Like everything,
yeah. So I'd say put those all out of your mind.
Sure.
Take the experience as it comes, and just be open to it. That's what I would say.
And floating's not something that you have to do every day, is it?
No, I mean, so the research shows that the effects of, you know, like, flow and increased learning, memory retention, recovery and stuff like that lasts for 2 to 3 weeks. So you only need them like once a month.
Yeah. And it's kind of good because it can be a little bit expensive, and and that's mainly due to the cost of all the Epsom salts and the machines themselves.
Well, and also because not a lot of people know about it yet.
Yeah.
So the demand, I don't think, is there.
To
bring
get that economy of
down.
scale.
Yeah. But I mean, even like knowing what I know about what it does for your brain and what it can do, in terms of like alleviating addictions and recovery and all these benefits. I mean, it's basically the potential to rewire your own brain, right?
That's what meditation does. It's been physically proven to help rewire the brain.
Absolutely, and this is like meditation times 5,
amplified,
maybe, right?
Yeah, sure.
So based on that, like I feel like for the current price, it's pretty cheap. But again, I am biased because I do work there.
Dude, thank you so much for coming and having a yarn to us. Hopefully this will encourage a few people to think about it, maybe even give it a shot.
Yeah. So if anyone's in Christchurch, we're at Cloud9 Float Club, and if you come in and say you listen to it on Wake Up NZ, you get your first float 10% off. So,
killer, dude. Awesome.
Yeah, come down and see what it's all about, and maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't, but either way, you'll get super, super relaxed.
Awesome, dude. Thanks, heaps.
You're most welcome.